Hey, welcome to Paris, France. That's me checking out the Louvre. I totally recommend going there when you get the chance. Today we're talking about the area of triangles and the area of trapezoids. So before we get started, make sure you have something to write on and make sure you write down all the formulas every single time so they get embedded in your brain. The area of a triangle is 1/2 the base times the height. Now the base and the height always have to make a 90-degree angle. That is the key. You cannot use the hypotenuse in a 90-degree triangle, and you cannot use any other side if it's a scalene or isosceles triangle. You have to use the two sides that meet at a right angle. But you need to be careful. Like in this diagram right here, your base is 20. It does not extend all the way over to the right angle. It's just the 20, and then the height, how tall the triangle is 28. So pause and see if you can substitute into the formula. All right, now looking if you put a 20 in for the base and a 28 in for the height. Now technically it doesn't matter the order in which you multiply, so those can be rearranged. It's not that big a deal. I'll get my area is 1/2 of 20 times 28. Now you can multiply again in any order. I think it's easiest to do half of a number first and then multiply, but if you'd rather multiply the other two numbers first and then divide it by 2 or multiply by 0.5, that is fine. I just can do some mental math here. I know that 1/2 of 20 is 10. So I have 10 times 28, and whenever I multiply something by 10, I tack a 0 onto the end. So it's 280. Then we can't forget whenever we're labeling an area, I have to have my unit squared. In this case, my unit is feet, so my answer is feet squared. You ready for another example? So go ahead and write the formula down. Pause the video to see if you can see the area of this type of triangle, and that would be like one here inside the Louvre. You'd see, look at the top, this is the ceiling of the Louvre. Pretty cool, huh? They meet at right angles right here, so which two sides would you use? So when you plug that in, you should get A equals 1/2 times 15 times 16. However, it's not easy for me to do 1/2 of 15, but I can do 1/2 of 16 in my head. So 1/2 of 16 is equal to 8, and then I have 8 times 15, and then your area, 8 times 5 is a 40. Write down my 0, carry my 4. 8 times 1 is 8 plus 4 is 12. So I have a total of 120 meters squared for the area of that window. Another example in a word problem, if you're given the area and you're trying to find another unit, all you have to do is plug it into the formula as well. If you know that it's a triangular shaped window, and the area is 12 square yards, you just put the 12 in for A instead. And then I still have a 1/2 or 0.5. The height is 3. I don't know the base, so I'm going to keep a B, and the height is 3. Now, in this case, you're going to have to get to decimals. You keep the 12. The commutative property of multiplication tells us you can multiply in any order. So I can multiply the 1/2 times 3. 1/2 times 3 is 0.5 times 3, or 3 divided by 2. I get 1.5, and then my variable drops straight down. I get 1.5b. Now this is just a squiggle problem. You have to isolate your variable by performing the inverse operation. So you do a stupid line or a squiggle. You're like, oh, what's next to my b? Oh, it's a 1.5, and what's happening right there? It's multiplying. So you ask yourself, well, self, what is the opposite of multiplying? And you say, it's dividing. So you divide both sides by 1.5, and you get 8 is equal to B. Not done yet. This is a word problem, and in area, everything has a label. So the 12 square yards, the base is not in square yards. It is just in plain old yards. It's the base of the window is 8 yards. Can you convert that to feet for me? Awesome. 24. 8 yards. Thank you. Now we're going to move into trapezoids. And trapezoids occur in the world all around us. This is an example of a pyramid that has a trapezoid. The trapezoid, in order to be a trapezoid, it has one set of parallel sides. So if you look at this window, you see the parallel sides, they never touch, and then these two are not parallel. They will eventually touch. The sides that are parallel are called your bases. So this side is a base, and this side is a base. Your parallel lines are always your bases. What I did, I just highlighted the different bases so you can see that the lines are always parallel. Your bases go into this formula. This formula is the area of trapezoids. A equals 1/2 height times the quantity of the sum of the bases. Base 1 plus base 2. Now you just call them base 1 and base 2. It doesn't matter the order on which you say which one's which base. And for this case, we're just going to make up some numbers. Let's say this base is 4 feet, and this base is 6 feet. And let's say that this whole thing is 12 feet tall. And you also make sure that it is meeting at a 90-degree angle when you do your feet. When you do your height. So the area of the trapezoid would be 1/2 times, and then pause the video and see if you can fill in the rest. This common mistake is to forget the times sign and forget the parentheses. Make sure you have parentheses around your bases. You can have the sum of the bases multiplied by the height and then times 1/2. And 1/2 of 12 you can do right away, or you can do inside the parentheses first, because P to the E to the M to the D to the A to the S, Pam, dust, don't stress. The order of operations tells us we should do inside parentheses first. So when I do 6 plus 4, I get 10. And then you can multiply in any order, do that commutative property of multiplication. It says you can multiply in any order if all you're doing is multiplying. So you can either take 1/2 of 12 to get 6 times 10 to get 60, or you could do 12 times 10 to get 120 and divide it by 2 to get 60, or 1/2 of 10 equals 5 times 12 is 60. Any way you rock it, when you multiply those three numbers together, you're going to get an area of 60. And then I check my label. I am working in feet here, so my area of my doorway right now is 60 feet squared. Awesome. Here's another example. You won't always see trapezoids that look so friendly ups and down with your parallel bases. Sometimes you'll see them rock to the side. And in this case, your bases are always the parallel sides. The 6 and the 8 will intersect eventually at some vanishing point over there. The 3 is a base, and the 6 is a base. Pause, write down the formula, and plug her in. And then talk about what the picture is of behind the formula. Alright, so I got as far as this. I got area is 1/2, and then I didn't know the height. But I needed to know the bases, 3 plus 6, because the bases were the parallel sides, and the bases are always the parallel sides. Now the height's kind of tripping me up here because I don't have a label on this guy. So if you turn it or you rotate it to look at it, or you know the sides are congruent, so this length on a rectangle is congruent to the next side, so this side is also a 6. The 8 is an extraneous extra piece of information. You do not need it unless you're finding the perimeter, in which case it would prove very useful. But 1/2 of 6, so I need to make sure I put that times sign and then a 6. And inside the parentheses first, I get 1/2 of 6 times. You notice that my parentheses flew away. Whenever they're done, they go away. What's 6 plus 3 is 9. Now, personally, 6 times 9 isn't as easy for me as 1/2 of 6. So I'm going to do 1/2 of 6 first. And if you'd rather do 6 times 9 and then divide it by 2, that works. 1/2 of 6 is 3. And 3 times 9 gets us an answer of 27. And we don't have a label, so I need to make sure I put units squared, because whenever we don't have a label, we have to rock the units squared. Now, do you ask yourself, what is that a picture of? Oh yeah, money, honey. That's money in the background, and that is a trapezoid right there. Oh yeah. Now, another trapezoid in nature, the pyramids. You can make up some numbers here. Let's use 20 for this guy. Let's do yards, and let's do 15 yards here, and 16-yard height. The sides are all extraneous unless you're trying to find the perimeter. So pause the video and see if you can plug her in. Okay, just take a look at your math. Did you plug in 1/2 times 16, then a parenthesis, 15 plus 20? Awesome. Take the next step. Pause the video and take the next step. Now you're writing this down, right? I know you are. So you did half of 16 times 35. Now how many got 16 times 35 in your head? Yeah, me neither. But I can do half of 16 in my head. Half of 16 is 8. And then 8 times 35 is a lot easier for me to do. 8 times 5 is 40, so I drop on my 0, carry my 4. 8 times 3 is 24 plus 4. What did I say before? 8 times 3 is 24 plus 4. Oh, then it's 280 label yards squared, or square yards. Wonderful. Now check out this cool table. Let's use some measurements over on the right hand side here. Let's say base 1 is 3.4 meters, base 2 is 6.4 meters, and the height is 5. If you'd like to draw a picture to help you, you can. Otherwise, you may be given measurements like this and you'll have to just plug it in. So A is equal to 1/2. The height, it says here, is 5. 5.0 is the same as 5. You can drop that 0 off. The bases are 3.4 plus 6.4. And technically it does not matter which one's base 1 and base 2, as long as you get both the bases inside the parentheses. And you're adding them. So I need to add 3.4 and 6.4. And remember when you're adding decimals that you need to line up the decimal places. Bring the decimal straight down, and I get 9.8. So my area is 1/2 multiplied by 5 times 9.8. Now in this case, I can do 9.8 divided by 2 first to get 4.9, and then multiply it by 5. Switch to a time sign there. Oh, naughty Reinhardt. 4.9 times 5. You can definitely use a calculator as well when you put your calculations in. You just want to try practicing. Makes your brain smarter. And you get 24.5, and my label here is meters, so it's going to be meters squared. Feel free to buy me a table like that. I think it's kind of cool. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your attentiveness and being an active learner and pausing and taking notes. Now we'll go on and formulate. Thank you.